Imagine this, you work extremely hard to land a new piece of business. Maybe it takes you several months. Now you are working with this client, you're doing great work, but then the engagement ends. And this is the story that so many consulting business owners find themselves kind of playing out, that you spend a lot of time and energy to land clients, but then your clients end up not continuing with you for the long term. And so I'm going to share with you some of the most common reasons, challenges, as well as opportunities that you as a consulting business owner have to increase the length of your client, not only engagements, but more importantly, the relationships that you have with clients, so that you can keep those projects and you can keep the work coming for longer. Okay, let's get into it. All right, so the first thing that tends to happen is, as a consultant, you go in, you work on the project, and then you leave. And that makes sense to a degree, because some people say overstay your welcome, right? The goal is not to just go in and be there forever for no reason. However, and this is the most important distinction, if you go in and you provide service A and then you're done and there's nothing else after that, you're missing a massive opportunity. And that's exactly what a lot of consultants do. Instead, what I would encourage you to think about, and the way I look at this, is you should be with that client as long as you can provide value to them. And value is not only what you believe, right, or what you see, it's what both of you see. So as long as the client is seeing value that you are contributing, then they're going to want to keep you around or involved. And likewise, it's if you can provide value, if you can help your client to continue achieving outcomes, right, you're going to provide a very solid or even exceptional ROI for them, and it's a mutual win. So what does that look like? Well, what it looks like is, as you're working with your client, you should always be paying attention. You should be also training your team, if you have team members, to pay attention to where are there other opportunities for us to add value for this client. And that doesn't mean that you're just going to come up with like, oh, we're going to add in a completely new service that has nothing to do with our core business. I'm not suggesting that. You still need to be thoughtful about what you do and what you propose. But when you're working with your client, rather than just going in, doing the work and leaving, actively look for opportunities that could create value for the client that maybe you hadn't thought of originally, and certainly the client may not have thought of it originally. But when you do that and then you talk to your client about those opportunities that you're seeing, that can lead to extending the engagement or a secondary engagement. And as you're doing that over and over again, it's the value that you are contributing starts to compound, right? What you learn from the first stage of working together, the first project, can now be brought into the second and to the third. And so it stacks, right? The value stacks, and it's a real win for both parties. All right, the second opportunity and issue as well is that so many consultants really position themselves with their clients as a vendor, right? As a provider of a service, not as a strategic advisor or not as a strategic thinking partner. And if you're doing that, if you're just showing up, doing the work, and the way that you interact with the client or the way that you position yourself and talk about yourself and the way that the client gets to know you, if they're just seeing you as a consultant, then you're a dime a dozen. And then it's just, in their minds, it's easy to use you when they need that and get rid of you when they don't. But if you invest in the relationship, if you think about how can I add value beyond just doing the work, how can I talk to my client and show them things or help them to see things they haven't seen before or even thought of before, right? If you add value at every step or every kind of opportunity, well, now the client starts to, in some ways, almost rely on you, right? They really trust you. They know that you have their best interest at heart. Well, now that separates you from other consultants because you're taking the time, the energy to show up. And I'll give you a very simple example of this. And I've shared this before, so you may have heard this, but I learned many years ago when I was running a business that we had in Japan, one of my mentors, a Japanese business executive, taught me the power of thinking about your clients at all steps, and even applying this to people that were not yet your clients. But in his case, right, he would read newspapers, several every day in the morning. He would clip out articles that he thought his clients would find relevant, and he would then either hand deliver them during meetings or he would fax them over to the client. Yes, I know, fax. I know that dates me a little bit, but that was highly effective. Why? Because it signaled to the client or prospective client that he really cared about them. And not everybody did that. Most people did that. Almost nobody did that. So he separated himself and his company from everybody else. And that's just one small example. But when you position yourself and take action as a strategic advisor, where you really have the best interest of your client at heart, your client picks up on that and then sees you not just as a consultant, but as someone that they really want to turn to and can count on. All right, the third is really about follow-up. And said more accurately, the lack of follow-up. Imagine you do a project, the project ends, and then maybe at some point in the future you're in touch with that same client. That's a mistake, right? That's a real opportunity. And the simplest way to fix that is to make sure that whenever the project has a natural end, right? Meaning that in its current format, there's no other value that you or the client have found that can be created. And so, you go on, you kind of go off your own ways. The client's happy, you're happy, but it's a natural ending. Well, that's fine. But the mistake that people make is that the gap after that, or what happens after that, they're hardly ever in touch with that past client. Maybe if they send out a newsletter or something along those lines, but most consultants tend to wait to go back to those previous clients until, or I should say, they don't go back to them. What happens is they're waiting for that client to come back to them when that client needs something. And that's very reactive. Instead, a much better approach is to make sure that you have inside of your CRM, right, or however you're managing your clients and kind of your database, that you have triggers and rules for how often you are following up with that past client. And so, as the common saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. If your ideal clients, if your past clients aren't thinking of you because they're not seeing you, you're not coming up, often enough in everything that's going on around them, then it's unlikely that they're going to remember to contact you, even when they might need you, or they'll forget that you offer a specific type of service or product, or that you're an expert in solving a specific type of problem. Right? Everyone is busy. Everyone is inundated with all kinds of emails and noise, and right, just life is happening, business is happening. So your job is to make sure that you're always staying top of mind. And when you do that, you'll find that you get a lot more conversations, a lot more people coming back to you, right? Your pipeline continues to build and stays full, and therefore your business grows. Next, let's talk about the lack of systematic way to expand client projects. The way to think about this is you go in, you deliver your service, you help the client with whatever the initial engagement is. But if you want to be even more prepared, you should be thinking about what your overall business model looks like. What are your services? So rather than just going in and providing service A for a client and leaving, if you know that you specialize in working with a certain type of client, you solve a specific type of problem, and most of your projects, right, look a certain type of way, then what you should be thinking about is how do you craft layers of services? So you're going to have a certain, initial offering, and then you might move a certain percentage of your clients, hopefully the majority, to the next level of offering that makes sense for them once they've done that initial engagement. And so that's one way to think about expanding your service offerings, right? And your client engagements, and therefore your revenues, is by not just providing one service to a client, but thinking about when you provide that typical one service to your clients, what else could you offer to those clients? And so when you have that ready, then as you're working with that client on the initial engagement, you're going to find opportunities, as I talked about in number one, you're going to find opportunities to add more value. And so you're going to be, noting those down. And then as you have more conversations with the client, you might say, last few weeks I've been going through, or as this project has evolved, I've noted and kind of spotted several things that stand out to me. Here's what they are. And many of our clients actually deal with these same things or have these same challenges or opportunities. And so what we do with many of them is we help them with X, which is the next service offering. Is that something that would be of interest to you? Like, it can literally be as simple as that type of a transition in the conversation to another engagement. This is all, again, based on you providing real value in that next engagement. But having that ready is one really powerful way to expand your services. Another way for you to expand your services inside of that client organization is to think about what other departments inside that organization, if it's a large enough organization, might also benefit from that same project or type of engagement that you just did for one. So let's say that you're working in the R&D department, and now there's an opportunity for you to actually go and work with the sales department, helping with your, maybe your presentation skills, or a presentation consultant. You help organizations to present their ideas and information in a more efficient and effective way, right? So on and so forth. Well, you can apply that to multiple different departments inside of an organization rather than just selling to one and leaving. So that's an opportunity for you. You can also think about geographies. Maybe you're providing a service, sales training, consulting services to large organizations' offices in Argentina, where you are based, but they also have offices in the US. And so you can now get introduced to the US office and look at providing your services and that same kind of training program to the other offices around the world. And so I should also add one more point to this before we wrap up, and that is that it's really important that when you are building relationships inside of an organization, that you don't only build a relationship just with the key stakeholder or the champion or the decision maker. Yes, you want to have those relationships and you want to cherish and nurture and cultivate them. But the reality is that people move jobs at times. And so what you want to make sure is that you are really leaning into cultivating and strengthening relationships with everybody that is involved in that project. And that doesn't mean you'll spend the same amount of time with everybody, but it is important for you to think about how you can really start to build relationships with other stakeholders inside that organization. And so that's one thing you could do right now, is to look at the projects that you've been working on now or in the past and think about who else, touched that project that maybe you haven't had a point of contact with in a little while, and reach out to them, see how they're doing, see how you can add value for them, right? Remember, we're in a people business, a relationship-based business. The more relationships that you are cultivating, the more conversations that you are having, the more opportunity there is for you to find problems that you can help to solve or value that you can add. So if I was to sum up, all these points into one, it is really think about your client engagements, not just as a contractor, not just as somebody doing the work, but really think of it as a business owner. Think of it as a partner. Think of it as a strategic advisor. And how can you engage with your clients where you're always looking at, and trying to find opportunities for them to create more value, where you have their best interests in mind and first. And so based on that, you're always coming to them with ideas, you're sharing ways that they can create, greater results, and how value can be expanded, which of course benefits everyone. So those are just a few things that can help you to really create longer term relationships with your clients. And as a result of that, extend and expand the lifetime value of a client. And the saying is true that it's much better and much easier to grow your business from existing clients than it is through new clients. You need to do both of those. You always want to be bringing in fresh leads and building the pipeline with fresh opportunities, but the vast majority of consultants don't pay enough attention to the business they already have or the business they had in the past. They neglect it. And so for you, the opportunity is to really lean into your current clients and your past clients, because they're likely a really great source of your next several projects going forward. If you would like to talk about any of this, to have a review of your current kind of plan and what you're doing, and want to get some ideas of what changes you can make or what opportunities you might have that you're not seeing right now, then go to consultingsuccess.com, click on the coaching button or link on the page, or just click on any link you see around this video or wherever you are consuming this, and get in touch. You can schedule a no obligation complimentary call where we'll just talk with you about your situation and help you to think through what might be the best next move for you. You might right now, and we see this a lot with our clients, you might be sitting on massive opportunity that you're just too close to it, right? And so getting an external perspective on what's going on could really help you to think more strategically about how to grow and optimize your business to that next level.